In the shadowed chambers of ancient tombs, beneath layers of golden sand and stone, the Egyptians whispered of a figure who walked between worlds with the head of a jackal and the grace of a priest. He did not strike, nor scream, nor condemn. Instead, he waited. He stood beside the newly dead, a silent guardian cloaked in jet black fur, his eyes glowing amber like the horizon at dusk. He was Anubis, the one who watched, who weighed, and who led souls through the veil. But who was this mysterious god? Why did the ancient Egyptians entrust their most sacred rituals to him? And how did a god born of the wilderness become the eternal conductor of souls? Let us step into the underworld, where silence echoes like thunder, and every heart is tested by truth. To the ancient Egyptians, death was never an end. It was a doorway, one wrapped in linen, painted with spells, and guided by gods. More than 5,000 years ago, Egypt built not only pyramids, but philosophies. The soul, they believed, was eternal. Life on earth was merely a chapter in a much grander tale, one that continued in the field of reeds, a divine mirror of the Nile Valley, lush and eternal. Here, the dead could farm without toil, rest without pain, and reunite with loved ones beneath date palms and sycamore trees. This paradise was not for everyone. Only the righteous could enter. And to prove one's righteousness, every soul had to undergo a trial, a weighing of the heart. To prepare, the living left behind spells, amulets, and scrolls. The Book of the Dead was often buried with them, papyrus guides inked with prayers and passwords to help navigate the underworld. Families spared no expense. Funerary rituals included processions, offerings of food and drink, and elaborate tomb paintings illustrating the soul's passage. These weren't superstitions. They were blueprints for eternal peace. Funeral rites were deeply communal acts. Families and priests would recite hymns, offer incense, and stage symbolic dramas reenacting the myth of Osiris. These rituals were not only about grief, they were about hope. Hope that the soul would pass every test. Hope that it would be met by Anubis, not lost in the darkness. When a person died, their soul embarked on a perilous journey. The tombs carved beneath the earth were not just resting places, they were maps. Every image, every hieroglyph was a spell to guide the deceased. At the end of the journey stood the hole of Ma'at, the hole of truth. Here, Anubis presided with steady hands. In this moment of judgment, he placed the soul's heart on one side of a golden scale, on the other side, the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth, balance, and justice. This ritual is described in the Papyrus of Ani, one of the best-known versions of the Book of the Dead, dated to the 19th dynasty, around 1250 BCE, and preserved today in the British Museum. Visit the video above to learn more. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was pure. If heavier, tainted by lies or cruelty, it was devoured by Amet, the devourer, a chimeric beast, part crocodile, lion, and hippopotamus. Anubis did not punish, he merely revealed. In silence, he decided nothing, but saw everything. Behind him, Thoth recorded the result. Before him, Osiris watched with the gaze of eternity, but it was Anubis who ensured the scale was fair. He adjusted it, guarded it, protected its sanctity. In his hands, judgment became a sacred art. Sometimes the heart spoke for itself. In Egyptian belief, it carried memories, deeds, and guilt. The spell, "Do not let my heart betray me," was often recited. The Egyptians understood that the hardest truths came not from the gods, but from within. Even high officials and royalty feared this trial. Despite their wealth and titles, their hearts too were weighed. Inscriptions show pharaohs humbling themselves before Ma'at, begging Anubis to guide their hearts toward lightness. No one, not even kings, was above judgment. But who was Anubis before this role? Long before Osiris became Lord of the Dead, before the myths of resurrection took form, Anubis was already watching over the departed. In the early dynastic period, the jackal was feared for its presence near graveyards, scavengers that disturbed the dead. Instead of destroying these creatures, the Egyptians honored them. They believed by deifying the jackal, they could transform destruction into protection. And so, Inpu, later called Anubis by the Greeks, was born. He was not just the god of death, he was embalmer, protector, and watcher of the necropolis. Tomb walls from Saqqara to Abydos show him crouching, vigilant, painted in suit black, his ears alert. His black color was symbolic, not just the hue of jackals, but the fertile black soil of the Nile, a symbol of rebirth. He became known as He Who Is Upon His Mountain, a reference to the high desert cemeteries where the dead were laid to rest. It was said he could see every tomb from his perch. In pre-dynastic tombs, small black jackal figurines were buried with the dead. These weren't idols, they were guardians. His cult grew rapidly, especially in the first nome of Upper Egypt, where a city called Sinopolis, City of the Dog, became a center of Anubis worship. Worship of Anubis was personal. Shrines dedicated to him often included prayers asking him to open the gates of the West, the symbolic realm of the dead. Pilgrims left offerings, bits of foods, painted amulets, even letters addressed to deceased loved ones asking Anubis to deliver them. One of Anubis's most sacred acts was mummification. This rite, practiced for millennia, was more than preservation, it was transformation. According to myth, Anubis invented mummification when the god Osiris was murdered by his brother Set. Osiris's body was dismembered and scattered across Egypt. It was Anubis, along with the goddess Isis, who gathered the pieces. In a ritual act of magic and reverence, Anubis embalmed Osiris, wrapping his body in linen and whispering sacred words. Thus, Osiris was reborn, not on earth, but in the afterlife. He became ruler of the dead, and Anubis stepped aside with humility. From that moment on, Anubis served as the one who prepared the dead to meet Osiris, no longer lord of the underworld. He became its most vital guide. According to research, Anubis's role evolved, but he never lost importance. His presence was invoked in nearly every burial. Embalmers wore jackal masks to honor him. The tools used, hooks, knives, resins, were blessed in his name. The process could take 70 days. Every bandage placed was a prayer. Every oil applied was a blessing. Families often commissioned funerary papyri with spells for Anubis to read aloud, protecting the deceased from curses, demons, or losing their way. His name was spoken like a promise. Guide my father, watch my mother, carry the soul gently. The ritual was often performed in a tent or a structure called the place of purification. Here, sacred chants filled the air, priests moved in careful steps, and the dead lay not as corpses, but as travelers readying for their journey. Anubis was not a god of vengeance or cruelty. He did not inflict punishment. He walked beside the soul. In Egyptian texts, he is referred to as He Who Is Upon His Mountain, watching over tombs from the desert's edge. As a psychopomp, a conductor of souls, Anubis appeared at the moment of death to lead the Ka, soul, through the Duat, the realm of the dead. He helped the soul recite spells from the Book of the Dead. He comforted the lost. He ensured their heart was weighed justly. Even as other gods like Thoth, Ma'at, and Horus played roles in the afterlife, Anubis remained the first face many souls would see. The Duat itself was a realm of trials, serpent gods, fire lakes, enchanted gates guarded by beings with names only the prepared could say. But with Anubis, the soul was not alone. He had walked these paths for thousands of years. He would lead the spirit to where light broke the shadow, and once the judgment passed, he would disappear quietly, his task complete. Even in dreams, people claimed to see Anubis, standing silently near thresholds, or gently guiding lost souls toward a soft light. His presence meant transition, but not terror. He was the calm in the storm. In later dynasties, Greek influence reimagined Anubis as Hermanubis, a fusion with Hermes. Even in Rome, he was respected, seen as noble, mysterious, and wise. Unlike Hades or the devil, Anubis was not feared. People wore amulets of him for protection in life and death. And even today, archaeologists unearth statues of him standing guard over burial sites. His long ears still listen. His black gaze still waits. Anubis also appears in early magical papyri, where he is invoked as a guardian during rituals and exorcisms. The Coptic and Greco-Egyptian traditions retain his symbolism. In modern culture, he appears in art, novels, video games, and films, sometimes misunderstood, but always powerful. His silhouette is unmistakable. His mythology may be ancient, but the themes he embodies, protection, fairness, reverence, remain timeless. Even academic studies in comparative mythology recognize Anubis as one of the earliest examples of a psychopomp. His image still influences how we imagine death, as a passage, not an ending, a transition, not a punishment. In a world that feared decay, Anubis offered care. In a world obsessed with truth, he delivered balance. He did not rule with iron or flame. He guided with silence, with shadow, with an artist's grace. Anubis reminds us that death, too, needs a guardian, not to chase us into darkness, but to show us the way through it. So if ever you find yourself wandering ancient ruins, or standing in the hush of a museum before a golden sarcophagus, look closely, the jackal still awaits. Subscribe for more forgotten stories, myths, and ancient truths, and let us know in the comments below, which myth would you like to hear next?